This is the Serial Entrepreneur Club Hour. We do this discussion and podcast every Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. And today we're talking all about how to build a SaaS business. And I know, Jeffrey, you've got a lot of experience in this as well, given your name, Jeffrey SaaS. But we are talking about software as a service, which I also call subscription businesses or digital platforms that you can build and generate thousands, maybe tens of thousands, in some cases, even millions of dollars. Michelle's going to lead us today. I am driving, so I apologize about if there's any issues with the sound.
Hello, and happy Friday here at Serial Entrepreneur Club. Thanks to all the members who are joining the room right now. So today we are going to talk about specifically about the SaaS, software as a service business model. So, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room, a lot of members in the room who either have been involved with the SaaS or they're thinking about a platform because that's what it is at the most basic level to build. And what are all the components of this from a technical as well as business model and finance point of view? So today we're going to, concentrate from the launching and more the economic side. So we're going to have Colin, who is also the founder of Serial Entrepreneur Club, be our guest. Colin is a veteran in this field. Probably, at least 20 years back, Colin has taken SaaS focused business model companies public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, as well as had very successful exits for businesses operating under this type of business model. So, just to kick us off, just thinking about it, we're going to go really quickly on this show to questions and feedback. Um, but here are a few things to think about. When we think about businesses that are software as a service, they're very, attractive quite oftentimes from the user side, whether it be an individual or, a business, because, it can be fast deployment, little or no hardware, which means little to no maintenance and programmers. They oftentimes, really, take care of all the legal compliance as well as testing and, building out the whole nine yards. So what does it take to make a successful SaaS product platform? And what are the economic and investor kind of considerations that we face making it profitable and scalable? So, Colin, we're going to turn it right over to you while we start bringing people on the stage. But kind of give us like the 5 minute like rundown. What are the most important components from the startup side?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if you're on stage or you're in the audience and you would like to share this room, please do so. It's that button at the bottom there. You can share the room. It's the SaaS companies for me are one of the best models that you can ever launch as an entrepreneur. And I've had the opportunity to do it in the 90s with ISP and hosting, in the 2000s with the hosting platform. And then very recently, I'm invested in three SaaS-based companies. One is Safety Data Sheets. Another is a domain management system. And the third is an accounting platform. And they all have similar characteristics. They're all subscription-based businesses, paid monthly, or even paid yearly, as in the case of our domain business that Michelle, Jeff, and I ran called .club. They're all subscription-based businesses and accretive. They were also all accretive as the company continued to live on. All of the companies grew, and they grew in a very predictable way. So we had a good understanding exactly when break even was going to come. And unlike the e-commerce businesses that we're invested here in, Michelle, Jeff, and I, the companies who are invested, those ones tend to go up and down a lot when it comes to sales and performance. The subscription businesses are very, very consistent. And I will tell you this, they're also consistent in that it takes 6 to 7 years for a lot of these companies to break even. And the value of your company isn't the profitability in the company, it's the value of your subscriber base. Cable companies are often sold based on the valuation per subscriber. When we sold .club, they looked at the number of subscribers, paying subscribers, especially those who renew the domain names. They looked at that and they used that as a valuation metric. They never looked at the EBITDA. Quite frankly, the EBITDA numbers in all of my companies, when we have sold them, they have been phenomenal. I mean, like you're talking 20 plus times EBITDA. But the other components we need to look at it in a SaaS platform is the user growth. Is it growing? Do you have pricing power? Are the customers who are using your platform stuck on your platform? Are there unique hooks that you have in place? Also, I will add too, if you're considering a SaaS startup, I've seen too many platforms to nowhere. There is a lot of opportunity on the internet today to build a platform if you can find the right niche, if you can solve the right problem that exists today in a particular industry. And there may be a few companies that are working on that particular problem. But if it's a niche, you have a much better shot at succeeding. If it's a broad based, I'm going to create the next Facebook, that's a tough one. That's a real tough one. And I've just seen too many platforms to nowhere where entrepreneurs have invested hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions, building these platforms, and nobody uses them. It's it's a shame. They're my opening thoughts, Michelle, and
Sure.
take it from here.
So you brought up some really interesting points for our conversation. One of them was about recurring revenue. And I'm going to add on a little here in lifetime value of a customer. So, before we jump to our members for questions, which we are going to do, I promise, real quickly here, I would like to hear you, talk about that a little bit more, Colin, because, we know, because we've been involved in these companies, oftentimes you do not make money for years. Oftentimes you're paying customers to be on your platform, for a year or so before you become profitable with them. Just quickly, what are your comments on that and how do you present that to investors?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I will say is, most of these platforms that I've invested in have a very high gross margin. So every dollar of incremental revenue is huge profits. It could be 60, 70, 80% in profits. And that's just the nature of the fixed cost of running a digital platform. But then we're going to look at some key metrics. If you are interested in launching a SaaS business, I'd suggest you look at the following. First, you're going to want to watch your cost of acquisition per customer. This is very critical because your cost of acquisition should drop over time as word of mouth picks up and as your product becomes a little bit more entrenched in the industry. So cost of acquisition is one. Another one you're going to want to watch out for is your average revenue per user. What are you generating per month? Next is churn rate. Churn, CHURN. Oh, I hate churn. And what's difficult about churn is when you get to be a larger, if you get to a larger customer base, that churn rate can sometimes be pretty impactful in the sense that if I have a million customers and I have a 2% churn a month, I'm now losing 24% of my customers a year and I have to replace those customers. But then I also want to show growth as well. And there's a metric called the rule of 40 for these subscription businesses. You're going to want to have, if you were to add up the EBITDA plus the growth rate, you're going to want it to exceed 40. And so you can have negative 20% EBITDA and 60% growth, and you hit 40. And that's sort of the key metric that investors are looking at when they're considering investing in a platform business. It's that rule of 40. You can Google it as well. It's something that is pretty easily found on the internet. But again, with investors, we want to be very, very careful not to overpromise. Having an investor base that understands the time it takes and the investment needed to get to break even is important. And I'll tell you this, I've had a number of investors who have just freaked out on me, and they let me have it year after year. And in a lot of cases, I bought out their shares, and there were fights and whatnot. And then I had other investors who totally got it and were totally supportive. And they continued to back us if we needed additional funds to get to that break even point.
All right, excellent. Some great advice. Yeah, Jeffrey, let's go right to you.
Yeah, so I think, Colin brings up some really good points. I also think if you're thinking about whether your startup idea is going to be good as a SaaS business, you want to think about things like stickiness and dependency, meaning how dependent are your customers on the product, and thus how difficult is it for them to switch or leave, because that's going to increase the lifetime value of the customer. So if you have a service that someone only needs to use infrequently or one time and they're done, it's not going to be good for ongoing recurring revenue. Think about some of the successful SaaS businesses. Think about, well, even with .club, with the domain names, when someone registers a domain, if they build a website on that domain, it's hard for them to leave. They're using it for email, they're using it for their business as their website, so they have to keep renewing that subscription as long as they're utilizing the product. Think about something like Canva. If you start using Canva and you've uploaded your logos and you have all your projects there, and that's kind of your base of operations for all your creative designs, it's hard for you to leave because you're going to lose all that stuff or have to transfer it out. So think about how dependent your customer will be on the service, and if it's going to be difficult for them to transfer or leave, and then you have something that's going to be lasting and have a lower churn rate and a longer lifetime value.
Right, excellent. I completely agree. And in the beginning of that could be a competitive advantage if you can quickly onboard competitive customers or new customers. So,
And I just want to mention, Michelle, one other SaaS. I think the popularity of SaaS businesses have made some companies go a little bit crazy, because I recently read that BMW is going to turn the heated seats into a SaaS service, meaning if you buy a BMW and it has capable heated seats, they will not activate that function unless you pay a monthly subscription for the heated seats. So I'm not sure if that qualifies as a SaaS business or not, but clearly everyone's trying to capitalize on this notion of recurring revenue.
Well, it's definitely an ass business.
oh, yes, it is. All right, Jacob, please, what is your question or comment for us here about SaaS businesses? Jacob.
Yes, hello. But I'm investor, and but actually, we are interested size very much. We have some project about from size, but my question is. Science is very good traditions, but the most important, because I read many BP about science, how the most problem is how they are very difficult to make profit. Of course, especially they find the first customers, because you can find make some sales from B2B or from some B2C, but to be usually they will find the first customer from B2B, because the big customer they can give more money, but they will, if they use the B2B, they will lose this customer. So my question is how to make the first customer or first good profit for the size. This is because I meet many projects, but they always tell me the good business model, the good technology, but they can't make money. They can't to find the serious customer who they will really pay you. This is problem. Maybe.
All right. So, Jacob, obviously you're bringing up the point. Like you need customers, obviously, but in these kind of businesses, because they're so costly, oftentimes you need many customers and or high paying customers. So, Colin, what was your experience? What's your advice? Like, how do we get those customers very rapidly onboarded?
Yeah, earlier I talked about the cost of acquisition per subscriber, and we're going to want to watch that very closely because if it's too high, if it exceeds the lifetime value of a customer, and there may be some rare cases early on with a platform where that is the case, but for the most part, if it exceeds the lifetime value, then you're losing money for every customer you sign up to the platform. And then if you use real dollars and you or discounting, um, that's you're still losing money. So we're going to want a cost of acquisition that's as low as possible. And I look back at what we did at Internet Direct, the ISP, or Easy Hosting, the hosting company, or Hostopia, the hosting and email company, or with Authentic Web very recently, the domain management company, with .club. In all those cases, we focused on a distribution strategy. So the very first day that when .club went live, we had already sold 30,000 domain names as Jeff and I were ringing a bell at GoDaddy because GoDaddy was reselling the .club domain names. So I think the first thing is distribution. And I know PR is also a big thing, but I'll leave that one for Jeff.
All right. So yeah, I would just add, it depends on the product, right? So, is it viable to pay the marketing expenses to get the broad market adoption? Or if it is, in that case, you get a business model like what we just talked about with Club, where we went through the retail outlets, the distribution that already had the audience. In our case, in that scenario, it was GoDaddy. Or is it, a very expensive kind of cutting edge new platform like a Clubhouse, right? I think it varies a lot, and you have to really be prepared to spend the money if it's something you need to get out the word on a general public, or if it's a highly specialized thing. I think somebody in the chat actually was commenting, or Orion. I hope I'm saying the name correctly. You would look for, onboarding specialists. You would look for people entrenched, salespeople, business development people entrenched in that industry already. Would be different methods. All right.
And also it depends too on, each type of business is different, but if you have a SaaS business that also has network effects, then getting it in the hands of people who will spread. Slack, for example, when it started out, recognized that if they just got a couple of developers in a company to start using Slack amongst themselves, eventually they would want more and more people within their company to get on board, and then they would get to the level where they'd have to have a paying account. So it's going to be a little different for each type of business. You really have to understand, who your target customer is, and how the word will spread. Is it something that has network effects where it gets better the more people are using it, or is it more of an individual thing where you have to show the value for the individual who's paying the subscription?
Yeah, and that virality is also measured very closely by the VCs. So if you're growing by X because X number of people refer um, uh, X number of people refer X number of people. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but the fact of the matter is, if I use the app and I refer it to 4 friends, that's a 4-to-1 virality rate, and the VCs investors are going to be looking at that, and that's why we often see platforms launch for free at first. because the free platforms have a higher virality. And I was involved in one company called Password Box, and I was on the board of advisors, and we had raised about $8 million, but we only had $100,000 in revenue, and we sold it to Intel, and it was for a very large payout. And that's because they saw that we had a high virality rate, that the number of customers were growing very quickly based on word of mouth.
All right, excellent. So, very diverse businesses, so very diverse go to market strategies. Adam, welcome back to the stage. Adam, what is your question or comment?
Hello, everybody. Hello. I really love the spaces that are managed by Michelle. They're always like the most entertaining ever. So, my question is, because I really have like this really really great idea, and I have like a billion ideas like per day. It's a very busy intersection in my mind, but when there's an idea that really strikes me, I really write it down and plan it out and everything. I have like the whole app idea planned out, everything. The only thing I have as a question is, c- can I have like some hard cost, like how much is it gonna cost to build an app with a subscription based way of monetizing, and what are some things that usually people like startup founders overpay that isn't necessary? I think that's really my question, because I have everything planned out for it.
Yeah, so we're going to want to get to MVP. The very first thing when we build these companies, um, don't make the mistake that I made in 2000s and start scaling up to 30, 40 people when we didn't have a product ready until 2002. The best thing you can do is scale your product. Sorry, keep it very lean in your organization. If you can use offshore resources to help reduce your costs, that can also be a good idea. I'm a business partner in a company called Geeks for Less, and we have 800 programmers in Ukraine, and some customer service in Philippines as well. But you can get a programmer for probably a third of what they would cost in the United States. In the United States, it can be very expensive. Now, I'm not suggesting you get in a plane and fly to Ukraine, especially in today's current environment. But I am suggesting that if you have a need for a lot of programs, I usually say 5 or more, you should be looking at India or Ukraine. It used to be Russia as well, but no longer. Um, and that can help you really get to where you need to get without spending a lot of money. Now, if it's a simple app, uh, and you only need 1 or 2 programmers to work on it locally, is probably a better way to go. And if it's too expensive to hire locally, then there you're going to want to do some type of partnership. If you can convince the coders of your idea, your concept, and you can give them options in the company where they can get a piece of it if it works out well, that's another way of sort of the costs. I'll have to say I've failed at this these models sometimes as well. I tried to launch a company called Shareholder Blockchain, and
All right, I
program work
think you're
together and the
got a
whole
little bit of. All right, Colin,
uh,
you're coming in and out.
Yeah, Michelle, if I can add about the apps for Adam,
Yes.
another thing to do. Apps, obviously, the cost of developing an app is going to depend a lot on the complexity of the app. The other thing is, if you have an idea for an app, you can test it first as a website, which will be much faster and much easier, and you won't have to deal with approvals from the App Store and all the other things. You can test your concept, including with a subscription service, because it's very easy now to build a website, all of the e-commerce platforms have subscription capabilities built in, so you can start it with a subscription. Almost all of the web development platforms now are mobile responsive, so you can have something that resembles an app and has the functionality without it being a native app. And you can test the concept first that way, faster and less expensively. And then when you find that product market fit, the proverbial product market fit, then you can invest in actually building a native app for iOS or Android, which will take time and more money. But you can prove your concept with a website, and still people can use it on their phones, use it as a mobile website, and see if you can get some traction, see if it's working the way you want, see if people are willing to sign up and subscribe for it before you invest in the time and money of building a native app.
Uh, so basically, because yeah, you mentioned that like it depends on the complexity of the app. Okay, so first of all, I'm not a programmer, in respect to anybody that's a coder or a programmer, but let me just give a little bit of detail before my time is up here. uh, like for example, the app is going to be like a reading app, is going to be at the same time a marketplace, to get to get the books, and at the same time is going to be a new technology on how to read these books. So basically it's going to be like serial, like instead of like reading lines, it's going to be word by word. So would that be complex, or in my mind does it just seem so simple that maybe it could be easy?
Can I jump in and answer this question for him? So as an app developer, right? Like the first thing that I would say is go out first and get the wireframes done, right? Before you even talk to any developers, they're gonna have to see exactly how many screens they have to build, right? So and then after that you can kind of get a quote, and then you can actually figure out the complexity and actually map out how your whole app is gonna work. So I think that would be the first step.
Yeah, that's great advice, R. Thank you for that. For me, I would also say, sometimes the cost is not all in the technical aspects, but it's having a successful launch and getting critical mass. So, in addition, to RR's advice, I, have at least a one-page marketing plan, an honest one about how much it's going to cost to really get customers and get to that critical mass. And that can oftentimes be very expensive. So that's a big part of the equation as well, because it's not build it and they'll come. Typically, it's not, anyways. Okay, let's go to Shelley. Hi, Shelley. What is your question or comment today, please?
Hello there. So, my question is definitely no comments because I'm a newbie. Has really been about integration. I am someone who's been working in that real estate and sales space, and I've been building websites. Oh my God, for a couple of decades now, but I'm not a coder. I'm working on that website, that responsive, it looks like an app, but it's in everything. It's the digital business card, it's the website, it's going to have it converted into a progressive web application. And where I've been asking myself if I should do an affiliate relationship or go white label some sort of a funnel software or something. And I was hoping that maybe you guys could give me some feedback on white labeling. I don't have the skill set or the resources to start trying to go and create software from scratch. And I keep hearing pros and cons, and I was hoping you could give me some good opinions, please.
Yeah,
And thank you.
absolutely. Um, so I think white labeling is a very strong alternative. It could give you the chance, if you have the customers, you can drive demand to see if it is a viable product that you want to build out in the future while making money and learning today. You can learn a lot and get a lot of customers potentially by using somebody else's system. So, I think the thing to learn there is, how much support and how much customization is possible from any vendor that you're looking to white label. And then there's a lot of degrees of white label. It could be a complete custom, they have an API, you customize everything. Or it could be as straightforward as you could change a few colors and put your own logo. But it absolutely, I've worked on products where actually in the real estate market from some top real estate software platforms where we allowed people to do different levels of customization. And I would highly recommend, in my opinion, to start off with the basic one where maybe you could change some colors, have your own emails, that's important, right? And your own logo.
Okay, that sounds fantastic because I've spent thousands of dollars already over the last 18 months working on all of this, and I've got the designs and the presentation down. So every time I present myself in beta, I'm passing I'm getting through the gauntlet with flying colors. But now it's about, okay, so what is necessary? So I was hung up on that, and I do appreciate it. So I won't be overly chatty. It's just I wanted to hear a confirmation of what my thought process was. It's it's a difficult space, and I don't want to spend another several $1,000s to throw it in the trash can. It's just R&D is just killer. And with that, I yield.
Look forward to hearing how it works out. And it looks like we have Colin back on. Colin, did you want to add
Yeah,
anything for Shelley?
when you do private label or white label, it can actually be very expensive. There's a lot of development requirements that the end customers have, but consider co-brand and affiliates. You mentioned affiliates earlier. Affiliates or
Yes.
co-brand. Yeah.
All right. I will absolutely add the affiliate or the co-branding. I have been approached by someone, but I haven't gone that way because I think she's just another white label. But I will see if I can go to the source and make that proposal because I
Yeah,
do have a really great platform.
sometimes at Hostopia, we would um, suggest that the customer do a co-brand as a test to see the demands. And that was sort of our way of wiggling in there. And more often than not, once it was up and running and they're getting a check every month, they're like, it's working fine for me. I don't need to do the private label. So maybe you can suggest that we set up a co-brand as a test.
Okay, I will receive that. And the benchmark I'd given myself was to get 5 new customers a day. Do you think that I should go to them with less, or do you think that that's a good goal for me to set? Just to be able to say, okay, I'm onboarding 5 people a day for the last 90 days. So, here's the
Yeah.
value I bring to the table.
I would say it's always good to, have stretch goals, right, for yourself. Otherwise, you're kind of can spin out of, control and not accomplish. I would, be aggressive for yourself, but not hard on yourself, right? At least that will
Hmm.
force you to think about what you need to do that. I think it's an awesome goal.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you can think of it in terms of an equation or formula, your business, what's my cost of acquisition for those 5 customers? If my cost of
Got
acquisition for those 5 customers is substantially below the lifetime value of those customers, then it's simply a matter of presenting that to investors and getting them to understand the economics so that you can scale to 50 customers per day. If you can do 5 and you can do it profitably, you can scale to 50 if it's just a function of funding. And let me say this, when Jeff and I went to Venture Atlanta to a pitch competition, we were told that 70-80% of the pitches were subscription companies, and that Silicon Valley Bank, who understands SaaS-based companies, the vast majority were still losing money. So there's a good bank to work with. They understand subscriptions. They tend not to do loans until you get to about 5 or 6 million. But there are investors who are more inclined to invest in your type of business if the economics make sense.
Well, I will try not to talk too much, but what's funny, and it's really not funny, I was outsourcing and I had that, that newbie happy day where you realize you're making money and you're out at, you're sleeping or you're out at dinner and you hear that little cha-ching in your account, so to speak, and it got turned off. Then I didn't know what to do. So I've actually learned a lot. So everything that I have, I've built myself. I'm not outsourcing any of it. So my cost has been in my education and in my pain of arriving at this destination. So really moving forward, including any additional partnerships, co-branding, affiliate, white label, whatever it is, it's really going to be at cost per month for that relationship, either per month or per year. So I'm in a really good spot, and my cost to bring people in is damn near nothing. Because again, I've purchased everything, I own everything. So I will take what you guys have said and let that push me through the next few days of thinking, because I'm going to be coming out and going into beta September 1st. And I'm really excited. Yeah. So
Well,
thank you
that's
guys very
exciting.
much.
Exciting,
Yeah.
and you'll have to tell us how it goes. I'm just going to add this real quickly, and then we're going to get on to the next member. I think
Okay.
you said it's a real estate application. I actually worked in like kind of these personalized websites that were
Mhm.
through actually title and MLS. I know that's a lot
Mhm.
of jargon, but you know, there's a lot of opportunities. But one thing I would say is you're probably dealing with a less technically sophisticated client. So just keep
Yep.
that in mind too, which I'm sure that you already know.
I, I I I want us to move forward, but that's the nut I had to crack, and that's why I didn't release. I had to make it user friendly, and I finally got a site that a 5-year-old can manage. So
Uh,
yeah. With that, thank you guys. I yield.
great example too, to our members about a niche play. So we'll look forward to hearing about your success, Shelley. Let's go to Ragoff.
Hey,
Please.
thank you, Michelle. I think my question was partly answered by Colin, but I'm going to be improvising that so that the other part of my question can be answered. So, what should SaaS companies focus on in their first 3 to 4 years? Is it getting more subscribers or adding more features? How should we see money or is a subscriber equate? At what time they should draw a line, trying to balance it, like, is it subscription versus how much money is left in the bank, right? And is there a public facing website that shows us the subscriptions a SaaS company has? And I'll stop there.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is set a stage gate, and that stage gate is MVP. And we're going to run a really lean company like Shelly talked about, and we're going to once we get to that MVP, we're now in a position to present to investors. But I will put out a warning here. Most investors still want to see that you can prove the model, that you don't have a platform to nowhere. So the longer you can go, the better it is for raising money. The more you can prove your concept. So you hit your first stage gate of an MVP, at least you got something to show investors, right? And that does make a difference. Wireframes, I've seen that done before too, where you have photos and you've designed it really nicely on paper, but not in actual coder. You can do that, but obviously an MVP is critical, a minimum viable product. The next stage gate we're going to want to do is prove that this concept can work. And sometimes you can do that locally if it's a localized app that you can take, to multiple cities down the road. But we're going to want to prove that we can actually gain subscribers. And the sweet spot is that your cost of acquisition per subscriber is demonstrating that you can operate on a positive contribution margin, um, based on the lifetime value of the customer. So if you actually can acquire customers, and when I say positive contribution margin, I'm not suggesting you're profitable. And I don't think it's reasonable to expect profitability in a SaaS-based company for at least 3 to 5 years, and sometimes 7 to 8 years. And it's acceptable as long as you're growing that subscriber base. But if you can hit your second stage gate where you're actually proving the concept, and then take the third stage gate is going to be to prove it in a much larger scale. So if you can prove it in one city, oh my gosh, now you're starting to talk. The investors are starting to get excited. And by the way, it's a heck of a lot easier to raise money at a higher valuation than it is at a lower valuation for a a concept. If you could prove your concept, but then we're going to take it from that one city, just like Facebook took it from one college, and you're going to now expand to multiple colleges. You're going to want to expand to 10 different cities or 10 colleges, and then you're going to want to expand to 100. In the case of Hostopia, we did 10 in Canada, and then we went to 100 or so distributors in the United States, and then we went to South America, and then we went to Europe. And eventually, in your niche, in your product category, the dominoes will fall, and you can become the standard bearer of that technology. It does happen. So there's sort of like 4 or 5 stage gates to think about.
All right, excellent. Yeah, I would agree, especially since, as we've all talked about it, there can be, a lot of barriers to entry, but also barriers to success. So we really need to make sure that we're going down the right path. Okay, Rich, I know you've had some comments and some questions that I saw in the chat. Love to hear what your question or comment is, please.
Yeah, hi, Michelle. Thank you for bringing me up. My question really was, asking the panel about, what advice would you have for a disruptive B2B SaaS platform company? So that's really my question, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I think I remember back to Jeffrey Moore, who was on our show, who talked about the adoption life cycle of technology adoption. And whether it's B2B or B2C, we're really going to want to hopefully we positioned our platform at the right time in that cycle where we're just beginning to hit the early majority. More often than not, a new industry, and just call it like NFT platform or something like that, you start it and then the whole market crashes, like we saw that with NFTs, and then it doesn't come back for another 5 years. And that's what Jeffrey Moore calls the chasm. That's a difficult position to be in, and it can bankrupt a lot of the early technology companies in a particular industry. So we want to really survive that chasm and then catch the wave of the early majority, because when that takes off, the person who wins is the one who can deliver the fastest. The reason AOL won is because they sent diskettes out everywhere. You know, um, so that's something to consider. Just positioning it right on the technology adoption curve. If you're already down the path and you you're not in the early majority, you're in sort of the later stage or whatever it is, there are some techniques that you can use to gain customers. In B2B, one of the ones we used the most was our winning RFPs. And a trick that we did was that we helped our customers write the RFPs. And more than not, they were generally pretty lazy. They didn't want to go out and do the homework. But um, when we made contact with a potential buyer, they say, "Oh, well, we have a contract with dot dot dot." And we say, "Well, can we just send you a copy of our sample RFP just so you can check to see what would be involved, in doing a migration or signing up, uh, setting up a new platform?" And so we would send them our RFP, and our RFP would have a lot of traps in it. Things like, do you have these patents that people might have sued for, or do you have multi-language like the French and English for Canada and Spanish and English for the United States? We'd always try to find unique things that we have in our platform that they don't have, and then we would add that to the RFP.
That's great. That is such a good suggestion. Oh my gosh. And even if they weren't looking, right? Like you're in the top of their mind when they're thinking about how their platforms are performing. All right. So we have about 15 minutes left of this session. We've had a lot of great member interaction. Um, Are there any more questions before we move on from the folks on the stage here, or anyone who wants to come on stage?
Yeah, could I go? I didn't really
Yeah,
do it
yeah,
yet.
absolutely.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I had a question, right? So I'm in the Web3 space. I created a product. It's more of a SaaS, right? So I'm trying to figure out whether or not it should be subscription based or if for B2C or if I should go the B2B route, right? But I think it's more of so what I did is I created a CMS where I created a lot of features and then I mixed it into one. So then now I have a dashboard, and then I have a site where you can basically see all the stuff that you enter into the dashboard, right? So I'm trying to figure out how I should structure should I go the subscription route or should I just white label it? That's kind of like my question on that.
Okay, so this is similar to the decision that we had to make when we launched Hostopia back in 2000s. GoDaddy had already launched into the marketplace, so we were behind. We tried to launch a direct, it's still B2B, but B to small business. And our cost of acquisition per subscriber for that channel was around $1,500. It was insane. We were not making a profit. We were losing $450,000 a month. Then we came up with this idea that why don't we private label it or white label it through distribution partners, and they can, and then we can acquire subscribers at a much faster pace at a lower cost. And so we went and we signed up Bell Canada and eventually AT&T, Vodafone, Telecom, and their customer bases, and we're able to drive much higher growth rates and ultimately sell and go public and sell to a Fortune 500.
All right, all right, so Colin, I think we lost you at the end there. So, yeah, all right, so I think the suggestion was, from your experience, depending on, what the application is, it might be worth it to investigate going, through distributors. In other words, B2B. I would just
There's a
say, yeah, go ahead.
there's a little bit of extra work that you need to do for private label um, that can increase your development costs. But you can sometimes, we talked earlier about a co-brand, like you can sometimes set it up and just test the market and talk to some potential distributors about doing it. And again, I mentioned earlier, co-brand is one way of entering the market, sort of a hybrid between affiliate and private label. But if you do want to do private label really well, then you need to add an extra layer to your platform. So we had, our main focus was end customers no matter what, building websites, using email, that kind of stuff. But then we had to build a platform or sort of a secondary platform for the management of all the subscribers. And that had to be multilingual, and it had to have certain standards that these big, large corporations wanted to have in place. Um, so that's a consideration. Your R&D costs are going to go up when you go private label, but I'll tell you, I love the distribution, the power of using your customers or distributors of your business. Ultimately, it will drive your costs down of acquisition.
Right. So, I would just add, to what Colin said. It's a different customer that you're supporting, right? So, you just need to have those tools for a secondary support team to be able to help their customers, that kind of thing, as well as, access into maybe different level of, reporting and data. So if you can get a distribution and go B2B, like, you could potentially grow a lot faster, right? Because you get to leverage their clients. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I created so I'm the main developer, right? So I built all of
Okay.
this on my own. So yeah, what I might do is just talk to other collections that have a community and see what their take is on the product, and then probably talk to some of these larger marketplaces, and then talk about integration, and then see how that goes.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. All right, we have Hope now here on the stage. Hope, looking forward to hearing your questions or comments for the panel and Colin.
Oh, hi, Michelle, and hi, Colin, and Jeffrey, and everyone. So I'm based in the UK, and I have a SaaS company that I've just recently developed and launched. And so my question really is geared around hiring salespeople. So I'm looking at a annual revenue per customer of about 830 British pounds, and so I'm thinking, is it wise to hire people and pay them commission, or is it better to get in-house sales team? Thank you.
Go ahead. My internet's struggling, Jeff. So if you could take it.
But so the question was whether to hire an outside sales team or build a sales team in house. That was the question.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it will depend at the stage you're at and the finances the company has. Obviously, it'll be potentially less expensive upfront, but more expensive long term to use an external sales team. And again, there is some variation based on what your product is. You know, at the end of the day, nobody is going to sell your product as well as your own sales team. And when you use reps, you know, outside reps who are representing other product lines when they go in to see a customer. Again, this varies by vertical, but if they're going into a customer, they just want to close a sale, not necessarily the sale of your products. So, you know, you're not going to get the same level. That said, in certain industries, you know, having a great sales rep, when I was in the video game industry years ago, you know, sales reps were crucial to our sales and distribution, but we also had our in-house sales team working side by side with those reps. So it's certainly okay in the early days to start out trying to use outside sources, but as early as it's practical, you know, no one's going to sell your product or service as well as an in-house team that's 100% focused on it, that knows the product inside and out, and that really is relying solely on the success of your products or services. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's about testing. It's about going back to cost of acquisition per subscriber. We're going to want to find the lowest cost of acquisition. So it could be you set up a Google SEM program with inside salespeople, or it could be I have all outbound salespeople with a higher commission, or it could be I advertise on Facebook and I generate, you know, there's many different ways or approaches to the marketplace, and you're going to want to find which one works and which one doesn't. And then obviously when you find one that connects, we're going to want to scale that acquisition of those subscribers um, by tens. You're going to want to say, okay, if I can get 100 subscribers, let's get the funding to generate a thousand subscribers.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Jeffrey. I really appreciate your advice. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just head on for me, like I think especially at the beginning, any way that you can economically get more customers is something, you know, that you should be trying to do. And then you can figure out where to turn up that lever. I mean, it might be that you have a very defined sales process, whereas then if it's, I'm just making this up, maybe it's air conditioners, whatever, right? There's probably some very specific people that can sell into that product very well, but they may not, you know, want to come to work for you full time. So if you could have some kind of, you know, system where they could be rewarded for sending on leads that convert, and there's a very defined, elegant handoff to your team, like that might work for you. So I think just depending on the product and if you can get to the right people that have those contacts, you do it and you do it all day long, and you have some inside people because no one's going to care, as much, I would say, for the most part, about your customers and working through the operational details and onboarding than probably somebody that's working for you. But figure out every single way you can get a lead that converts. Thank you.
Yeah, with one of our companies also, we're looking to hire a salesperson for the safety data sheet company. And so we're considering targeting an ex-employee of our competitor who has a Rolodex, who can hit the ground running and make us money fast. And so it really depends, but we're going to want to hire people who have a Rolodex or have done it before. Time is not on your side when you have a platform that needs to break even. We want to acquire subscribers as fast as possible. And we're going to, at a certain point, we're going to want to shift our resources from R&D to sales. And we want to transform into a sales organization. When Hostopia started, it was probably about 4 years before we truly became a sales organization. And we're going to want to learn everything about that. We learned a lot from Jack Daly and Vern Harnish. I know both of those speakers have been on this show, and you can catch them in the podcasts, or you can just search Startup Club Jack Daly or Vern Harnish, and you can hear about what it takes to really run a sales organization. And I'm telling you, you're going to want to switch from R&D to sales.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks all the members for attending today's session. We've had a great session, a lot of good information. And this is going to make a great podcast and blog article. So be sure to check back sometime mid next week to www.startup.club so you can get the notes. I think in this blog post, Mimi, we could probably even add links to some of the prior shows that talked about selling. So let's go ahead and wrap up. Just a reminder, please sign up for our email newsletter and follow people, right next door to you or above you on the stage that you've gotten value out of. It's a way that we can all contribute to each other. And if you sign up for the email newsletters, you'll be sure to not miss anything. We send out email alerts about once a week in terms of giving you information about new or exciting events that are coming up. So thank you, everyone. Colin, why don't you give a few parting words, and it will be a wrap for this week. Colin. All right, maybe he doesn't.
There
Yeah.
he is. There he is. I'm back. I'm on the wrong screen. In any case, it is one of the most frustrating businesses to start. You do lose money. It's all about communicating with investors and setting clear goals and stage gates. And if you do that, you'll find that your hard work and the years you put into it will pay off one day. I've sold for these companies already, and I've not made the money on the actual operations, but the sale of those companies. So stick with it.
All right, excellent. All right, so thank you, everyone. This has been part of the Startup.club network, and check out the website. There's hundreds of past episodes as well as blog articles. And now we have this show actually as a podcast on all your favorite podcast networks. Thank you. Be well and have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.